You can't keep preaching without practicing. So, if you believe in something, demonstrate, document, share, and don't criticize, don't judge. I think that is the most important aspect, because once you start criticizing, you've lost your critical mass. You know, how would you actually show somebody by your actions things have changed, and for somebody else to look at it and say, okay, let me also give it a try.
Hello and welcome to the Plant Paradigm Podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with amazing individuals from all around the world and look for ways to create a clean, green, and sustainable future for us, the planet, and all beings. I'm your host, Tom Simak, a fellow plant eater and athlete, here to facilitate those impactful conversations. Before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to leave a note for anyone not following us on Instagram at plant.paradigm. Just go ahead and do that. There's some incredible information that goes up on there. And if these hour-long conversations are a bit too much to bear, I do post a lot of the highlights on Instagram and TikTok while you're there. With that being said, let's get into who you heard earlier on. That's Pinky Chandran. Pinky is an independent researcher, author, and a community journalist. She tracks policy and legal developments on issues related to waste management. She's the founding member of the Solid Waste Management Roundtable and a trustee at Hasiru Dala. She's also a board member of Seeking Modern Applications for Real Transformation, an NGO that runs Radio Mewat. This exchange touches on waste, recycling protocols, community, and creating a greener future. What I really loved about this conversation is learning how a community can work together to create a clean environment. Bangalore is a place I didn't know much about, but something we'll be talking a lot about, and hopefully you do learn as much as I did during this episode, especially regarding their waste systems. And coming out of this, I would say that they're doing so much right. But with that being said, I hope you enjoy this conversation between Pinky and I. Pinky, welcome to the Plant Paradigm Podcast. How are you going?
Good.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, an absolute pleasure. Look, I usually like to set the stage early on, and I'm going to ask you to debrief us on who exactly is Pinky and what are you currently doing?
Okay, who is Pinky? Well, that's a difficult question to answer.
Always.
But having said that, I'm actually a dog lover, and I enjoy writing poetry, especially anything with garbage or dogs. And right now, my current pet passion is stormwater drains, and so I've been tracking stormwater drains, trying to understand our relationship with drains and garbage, and so poetry just normally flows. But that apart, I've been a broadcast journalist. I co-founded a community radio station way back in 2007, and writing has always been my passion. So, I fell in love with waste as part of my journey with the community radio movement, and I've never looked back since then.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just before we move on, people might have heard a dog bark or so. We'll set the stage that we do have companion animals in the house. What's your dog's name?
Maya.
Maya, awesome. So Maya will be joining us for this conversation. It's totally fine. We love having a third person along. So there's so many cool ways we could take this, but this stormwater drain stuff, so that's really fascinating. How does that impact human beings or even the environment? Where do you kind of sit with that?
So, see, stormwater drains in Bangalore. I'm not able to recollect how it is in Melbourne, but in Bangalore, stormwater drains are part of our urban infrastructure, very visible, very open, but yet we invisibilize them. We only recollect or remember them only when there is rain, which means floods, and that's when it comes into focus. Otherwise, it's just silently sitting in. I think at one point in time, even though I've been involved in garbage issues for so long, um, and I used to pass the stormwater drain, which was on my route to work and home. And one day, I actually chanced upon the stormwater drain when I was driving by, and I looked at the stormwater drain bed, and it was full of plastic. It was completely full of plastic, and I couldn't just do anything but just stop and stare at it. I pulled over. I made my way to the drain. I just stood there, and I'll love to share a poetry later on, but that is what it tugged me. But at that point in time, like always, there's other pressing priorities, and you don't really go back to it, even though it haunts you at times. So last year, I applied for a small project grant, and I really wanted to, because right now in Bangalore there is a project going on which is called the Citizens Waterway Project, which basically is in a way reimagining the stormwater drain to make it more like a public space. And um, and so I decided that I would look at that particular stretch of drain and look at what is the interplay with garbage and the drains. Why is And especially because the drains have so much of plastic in it, so much of plastic items floating. I mean, right from dustbins, your helmet, plastic bags, you have mattresses, some of them throw. There's chair. We found so many small items that it really, I mean we are so used to listening about plastic in the oceans or plastic in the rivers, but stormwater drains and plastic was, it's not a very glamorous topic to talk about, and so it just gets it's not as majestic as the ocean. So somewhere I think
Mm.
in our conversations or in our advocacy work, it always tends to be hidden, and that's the reason why I looked at this particular project.
Yeah, well, what really comes to mind when I'm hearing that is when we look at like, well, you mentioned the plastics and we've got microplastics in the ocean. We can look, and now we know that a lot of it comes from river systems. So when you're saying these storm water drains, I'm thinking that that is a very big origin point to something that could eventually end up in the oceans.
Yes, yes,
And this
absolutely.
is coming from where? Like, are you thinking like it falls out from like um, trash trucks, or are you saying people just littering, or just a mix of everything?
It's a mix of everything. Um, One is, I mean, Bangalore has always been known as a city of lakes, and and so we had this beautiful man-made structures, which were earlier called tanks, but I think now it's been accorded the status of lakes. And because Bangalore is on a ridge, on a plateau, so we don't have a river originating in the city. So because the way Bangalore is, where it is located, it
Hmm.
needed water sources, and so in the past, the way it was designed to act, the lakes added like a feeder system to make sure that Bangalore was perennially, we didn't face water scarcity. But now, what has happened? A lot of land mafia have grabbed the lands, and the lake properties have disappeared. But we still have the feeder network, which is the stormwater drain, which ultimately drains into the lake, and from the lake it would drain into the river. So, like you rightly said, so it is a very essential part of the entire network per se, the entire ecology per se, and it's an important thing because it is. I mean, the very word, it means that you need to capture storm water. And but
Mm.
with the way things are, with the way we have concretized things, the runoff is not being able to go directly in it because there are multiple things. There's sewage, there's garbage, and the garbage. The reasons for garbage is either poor collection system, or it could be people don't have access to give away their garbage, so the dumping is a natural this thing. But it could also be garbage trucks and the way they are based, and it's spilling over. So there are multiple reasons. Or if there is a high rise building, or if there is any building, and it's easy to throw than easy to So yes,
Oh,
there's
that would, if
multiple
I saw
reasons.
someone in a building, in a high rise building, throw some litter, I would, my heart would break, Pinky, let me tell you. But that's a really fascinating point. The fact that facilities, well, waste management and waste facilities is a huge topic. And the more I personally learn about this plastic crisis and waste crisis we have going on, the more I realize, like you've been to Melbourne, you've been to Sydney, and if we live in I'm going to say a more Western city, metropolitan city, we have bins located every few meters. And what's the state of the waste system? Like, are there accessible bins? Is there a good waste management system? Like, why are people throwing stuff off? Do they not have any other option some of these times?
Okay, so see, Bangalore, for instance, has been very active in the waste management space, and I can trace this back way back in the late 80s, early 90s, when there were residents who got together to implement a three-way segregation. They also came up with this whole concept of a dry waste collection center in the neighborhood. But all said and done, these were in localities where people actually already had a voice and a political agency, and they were also, well networked. They were conscious about the environment, so they were environment literates, for so to
Hmm.
speak. But they also were able to do things, and then cut back, things changed, the governments changed, and all that. And in 2009, when I got involved, we formed a group called the Solid Waste Management Roundtable. But it all started. It became about. We formed it in October 2009, but the starting point was in 2000. In 2009 itself, in August. And my colleague Miriam Shankar, who is a German resident but residing in and has decided to make Bangalore her home, came up with this ambitious plan to clean up Bangalore. So she said,
Wow.
yeah, she said 15th August, let's do like a massive cleanup drive and rid Bangalore of its garbage problem. And I was at that time with the radio station, and she needed help in mobilizing communities, and so we got together to mobilize communities, and we managed to get about 4,500 people to come in for that particular day to clean up drive for that cleanup drive.
That's
And
incredible.
we were very happy and thrilled at the results. But the next day, I was hosting a puppy adoption camp for street puppies in Cubbon Park, which is one of Bangalore's most iconic destination in terms of a park. And I realized that the garbage was back, so I called up Miriam and I'm like, Miriam, there's something wrong. I mean, we cleaned up yesterday and the garbage is back. And then she's like, yes, I realized that. I said, we need to do something. And she's like, you're right. But let's do a smaller cleanup drive in September and then see what else we should be doing. So we did the smaller cleanup drive with about 200 people. And it was the same. The day we cleaned up, the streets were fabulous. And then the next day, it's back to square one. So there were two problems with it. You can clean up how much ever you want, but if you don't address the root cause, which is making segregation of waste at source work, it's not going to solve the problem. And the second one is, once you've collected all this material that you've cleaned up, where are you going to dump? You're not going to be dumping it in the city center. You'll obviously want to pollute a land which is far away from your house, because again, it's like don't see, don't tell, not in my backyard mentality. So
Hmm.
that's how we started reaching out to different groups in the city who were working in their own individual capacity or organizational capacity, trying to get this whole concept implemented on, making three-way segregation, documenting their success, documenting their challenges, and also data management and on keeping a track of what was the wet waste generated, what was the dry waste generated, what was the sanitary hazardous waste generated. So that's how we got together and started working on it. And we have managed to make a huge difference. And it all I mean this whole advocacy also went into the Karnataka High Court, who also then made sure that we follow segregation of waste at source. And then we had this whole ruling that came about, the solid waste management rules came about in 2016, which also talked about it. So we have this whole system, we have this on paper, but in reality, when you look at a place like Bangalore, what needs to happen is enforcement, and you implement these laws. Now, in some places, like I said, where you are conscious, where you have a voice and agency, it's very easy to work this out. If you stay in a multi dwelling unit, it's a law, you have to manage your waste. But what happens when you stay in a slum, or when you are in an informal settlement, or you are in a neighborhood which has been traditionally ignored, and you don't really have or you're not able to demand that kind of service delivery that a slightly higher income neighborhood or well connected neighborhood would get it. So that's where the problem lies.
That's that. Firstly, that's all incredible. You know, it's to kind of bring this back in preparation for this episode. I was really surprised about a few things about Bangalore, and to the point to what you were saying, it seems like such a um, plastic conscious city,
It is.
and I would potentially even put it above Melbourne in some aspects, which is really fascinating because people picture India, and for those who visited, especially those metropolitan cities, not what you would, I think, generally think. So, what I really want, so you said your friend is a German resident or was a previous German. I find that fascinating that she came with that topic because in a lot of cities in Germany, and you might be familiar with this program, but they have this system where you can pick up plastic, aluminum, different recyclable materials, and you can take it to this hub, and that hub will literally spit out money depending on how much waste you put in. Have you thought about how this could be implemented into a city in India such as Bangalore?
So okay, so here, this is so what happened is, I have to just take you back to this particular question, because while we went ahead and formed the group Solid Waste Management Roundtable, and we were talking about this whole concept of a dry waste collection center, which can be in every neighborhood or ward. I mean, that's the administrative unit of how it is structured in Bangalore. And so this discussion started in late 2009, early 2010. And in March 2010, I met another colleague, Nalini Shekhar, who was in Pune. And she was the one who co-founded this organization called Swachh, or Kashtakari Kagat Panchayat, KKPKP. And they are and they work with waste pickers. So when she came in for the to the meeting, she was very warm, very receptive, smiling, and the likes. And as the meeting progressed, I could see her lean back. She crossed her arms. She kept shaking her head, and she was like, something she kept mumbling. And I'm like, what happened to her? Why is she suddenly turning so negative? So we finished the meeting, and she stepped out, I think, to take a call or something. And I ran behind her, and I'm like, Nalini, what happened? And she's like, I'm like, were you unhappy? Did we offend you? What happened? Why were you so negative in the meeting? And then she's like, how can you people even talk about waste without waste pickers? And that was a huge moment of truth, because, like I was saying, I was telling you about stormwater drains being invisibilized. We just realized that we have invisibilized a huge community who actually subsidize the municipality for their waste collection. And um, and and that's when we started becoming more active and started looking at where the waste pickers reside. How do you mobilize them? Because they obviously have been inherently discriminated, or have had no social security benefits, and but they were subsidizing the municipality. So that's how we started Hasiru Dala. But I mean, she started the work, organizing, and everything, and I joined in with them as a volunteer, and then later on as a trustee. In 2013 is when we registered. But what we realized is that because if we want to go to the next level, then we need to really empower waste pickers to become waste managers and be able to offer these kind of services to all the communities. So that way their livelihood is also protected. So when you talk about cash component, what happens is you're taking away their livelihood for in a country like India, where I mean, the World Bank said that at least 1 to 2% of the urban population make their living out of waste in developing countries. And in 2013 itself, because we had already started registering waste pickers, we had approached the court, the Lok Adalat, which is a people's court, and so they also recognized and they directed the municipality to give them occupational identity cards, because most waste pickers didn't even have basic ID documents. So there is no question of they being able to access bank accounts or any of that sort. So once the occupational ID cards came about, then they had a lot of other benefits, like their harassment stopped. So the police could not pick them up and things like that. So that worked. So then the next step is, how else do you integrate them? So when we did the survey, and we had about a database of about 4,125 waste pickers, and we looked at what they were collecting and what they were saving the municipality, and we realized for 1 year they were saving the municipality 23 crores. So this is 23 crores in how do I convert that into millions? But anyway, so that is a huge amount of saving from a budget which is about, that time the budget was about 300, 400 crores. So 23 crores is a huge saving.
And how exactly were they saving the municipality money?
Because they were retrieving money, they were retrieving the dry waste which would otherwise have ended up into the landfill. But and so what we realized, that when the municipality earmarks budget for waste, the component is split between transport, collection, equipment, and things like that. But 50% of the budget was going into transportation, which means you take all the waste from here and you go about 40-50 kilometers out of the city, and from there, if the waste pickers are there, they pick it up and then again come back to the city. So you're looking at the amount of transportation that is
Mhm.
happening. So, but the waste market is right in the city. The waste trading market is right in the city. So if you have these neighborhood places, and if you collect it at source from a particular neighborhood, and this whole dry waste goes into the waste picker get access to it, the municipality can achieve break even in that particular. It's a one time investment if you set up the dry waste collection centers, right? And the O&M cost will always be with the waste pickers, because they are skilled, they understand the business, they understand the material, and you're not dumping it elsewhere. So we looked at what was the municipality paying the landfill owners as a tipping fee, and if
Mhm.
you subtract that by the amount that is not going to the landfill, you automatically get that figure of how much they're saving the municipality.
Fascinating. So, what you're saying, if I've understood this correctly, is like I'd be very curious firstly to find out, like for example, that recycling initiative that's starting in Melbourne, and a few nations have, or cities have adopted this. Have their jobs, or the jobs of these waste pickers, as you say, have they been affected? I'd be very curious to find out. But what you're explaining here is, from what I understand, like a communal rubbish area, I suppose, where the community members take all their rubbish. Are you asking them to separate it in two, or however that looks, and then the waste picker comes and they take all that, and then they organize it further, and then they get extra money, and then that
No.
money again can be funneled back into the community for like a local economy.
No. So the way it works is, when we advocated for the system, we came up with this concept. I mean, there were a lot of other volunteers who pitched in and came out with this whole concept of a two bin one bag system. So a two bin one bag system works in this way. So you have the green bin, which is for your wet waste, your kitchen waste. Then you have the red bin, which is for your sanitary waste or your domestic hazardous waste. But again, in sanitary waste, you have to wrap your sanitary waste in a newspaper marked with an X, with a red X. So you know automatically that that is sanitary waste. And for your dry waste, you have um, this canvas kind of a bag where you can put all your dry waste, because dry waste is normally bulky. So what when we started talking about and building awareness, it was that you clean your rinse your sauce bottles, rinse your beer bottles, rinse your masala packet or your pickles and jars and everything, and put it in, or your milk packets. And we have the concept of milk packets there. I know you have those jars, but then here it is milk packets. So we rinse all of that and keep it in that particular bag. And then we said that it's important for the municipality to look at separate collections. Wet and sanitary can be daily, but dry waste can be twice a week or thrice a week, depending on how it works. Now, because the government had already started constructing dry waste collection center, we said the dry waste collection centers need to be run by the waste pickers. The center, the land, the identifying the land and constructing everything, including providing baling machine and weighing machine, and the toilet and whatever, has to be the municipality's responsibility. The waste picker as an operator will run it. So initially there were two systems, buy back and take back. So which means if somebody wanted to go and give their dry waste to the centers, they could go and give it, and then they could be paid depending if it is high value. But it is but what happened is, once the system was established, so there were these people who would collect the waste, and the municipal workers would collect the waste separately, wet separate and dry separate, and give the dry waste, weigh the dry waste and give it to the center. So the running of the center was the responsibility of the operator, which is the waste picker. But that is again not going to be 100% sustainable, because most of the material that come in, if you look at it as well, is also low value waste. So you'll find like your lace packets or your chips packets, or no, or your chocolate wrappers, are all multi-layered packages. So you don't have a value for it. And there are a lot of other low value plastic bags and things like that. So in order to do that, you do need some kind of a support, whether it is in industry supporting or if it's a non-governmental organization supporting. But they could become like a resource organization who look after the data, who look after the basic administration, including doing some kind of an IEC building activities or a community engagement activities and things like that. So that was the concept that it worked with. So that way, the livelihood of the waste pickers, so the waste pickers then have an opportunity to go from being a waste picker to being a waste manager. So just the hierarchy.
That, you know how much I really do enjoy the fact that this is you're not leaving them high and dry. Like, I think if we were to just talk about the environment for a second, like a lot of people say, oh, we need to, you know, ditch coal is like the big thing that's kind of going around. And we're not here saying coal workers just, they're going to be jobless. We're saying, you know, retrain them, give those skills can go to renewable energy. And I love that you've adopted that in a physical sense. You're saying, no, we still need these people. They're part of an um, important cycle in our community, and they give back a lot, which is awesome. Now, something you mentioned there in what you were saying is about rinsing the waste. This is a huge problem. I think in Australia, I wonder if India is the same. If you don't rinse it, it's they have to do it, and if they're too lazy to do it, they're just going to bin it, and then it's just landfill, even though there was possibility to recycle it. Are people on the ground, in your opinion, actually following this kind of you have to rinse it out, or do the waste pickers rinse that out themselves if someone hasn't rinsed that?
So again, there is mixed group. There are some groups who take recycling etiquette very very seriously. But like for instance, if you are on Instagram and you happen to check out Mansoor, who is a waste picker, who is very active on Instagram, He normally shares videos and photographs of the dry waste collection center from his dry waste collection center. And like for instance, takeaways. People order takeaway, but you will still find liquid or gravy or sauce in it. And often, what happens is people would close it, and because the collection is twice a day or thrice a day, it goes into your bag and it comes into the center. When you open it, you'll be surprised to find not just the smell but also worms and flies and things like that, and it's terrible. But yes, what most of the time they speakers end up then putting it out and removing all the food out of it, and then rinsing or whatever if it's really bad, because certain plastics are again good plastic in the sense, valuable plastic in terms of the monetary aspect. So obviously they need to salvage it, otherwise when they further trade it, the aggregator or the trader is going to minus the money and give it to him because it's soiled, it's contaminated, which means he then will have to then do spend extra money in actually cleaning or whatever the product. So like that. So most of the times, pizza boxes or cake boxes, for instance, cake boxes normally come reach the centers with ants in it. The black ants and
Yummy.
yeah. So but if you were to go across some of the recycling hubs, like I have been doing a lot of tours around recycling hubs in India, and you will find in some places milk packets kept out, in the sun to dry, because it's not rinsed, it's smelly, you need to have it a little bit, you need to dry it, but then milk packets per se going through a different process, that they go into washing process, then they go into removing the inks and things like that. But yes, but most often people do tend to do a little bit of extra work.
Mm.
So
Well,
there's nothing that
I'm
gets.
glad. Sorry, what was that?
No, I said it won't directly be binned. You will try. I mean, most of them will try and salvage whatever they can.
Oh, well, I'm so glad to hear that. Something I find fascinating in your wording is that you're saying, well, when we're looking at the monetary way, you're saying like medium value, high value, low value. Now, this low value stuff you've described as like your chocolate wrappers, plastic bags. We're generally talking about single use plastic, I'm assuming, at this level. Now, in my research over the past year or two, I've come across that India in general is actually on a mission to phase out single use plastics. Now, when we're talking about the waste pickers, they obviously have direct benefit from this plan because when we're looking at what they have to sort through, number one, it's less, so it requires less time, but two, it's higher value stuff. What is your thought? And could you give? Are you believing this phase out of single use plastics? I know a lot of countries promise this, but never come through. Where do you stand on all of this?
Okay, so in so Bangalore is located in Karnataka, and in 2000, late 2015, there was a huge movement from citizens to phase out single-use plastic, and so the government of Karnataka then passed, an order which said X items are banned in Karnataka. And soon enough, there were different states in India like Maharashtra and all of these that followed suit, and they also came out with single-use plastic ban. Then you know what happened when the Prime Minister on World Environment Day 2018 he announced that India would make that decision, and then the center started acting, and they set up a committee and they decided which items will be phased out, and our first part of the ban is going to be taking place in July, because there are certain items that are being proposed to ban. But if I look back at the experiences that Bangalore had, not so much Karnataka. Bangalore was very active with its implementation. There was a lot of awareness around. If you look at many posts, there would be like, "Oh, Christmas is coming now. We don't need the glittery stuff. We can look at alternative stuff. Oh, this festival is coming now. This festival uses so much of thermocol. How else can we stop using this?" So there were citizens actually doing the research, experimenting, and coming out. And so it became like a norm. And it said, okay, now we don't need. Why do we drink tender coconut with a straw? Tender coconut in India was traditionally drunk just directly. So why do we need a straw? Then people said, okay, then maybe look at steel straws. If you not everybody can drink it. You have to be inclusive. And there are certain communities, obviously, who would need a straw. Like people with disabilities or senior citizens who really can't drink it like that. So you need to be inclusive. So what are the alternatives? So you don't look at a ban without thinking of alternatives, and you don't look at a ban without thinking of who it is going to affect. So with waste pickers, the question that you asked, we were at that point in time, I had actually hosted an exhibition on a photo exhibition on my tour and on the plastic recycling hub in Bangalore, which is in Ninth Delhi, and we had a panel discussion, and we had this. In the panel discussion, we had all the recyclers who were part of the discussion, and this was a question that was posed in the audience, like, will not the ban affect you because your livelihood is dependent on plastic? And they said, if you look at what our work is, uh, I mean, based on our work, we are actually a silent environmentalist. And if we are silent environmentalist, would we put money over the cost of at the cost of environment? Absolutely not. So in the past, when they were in waste picking, plastic was a new thing, and at that time, pet bottles didn't have a value, and then now it has a value. So there will be opportunities for the waste pickers to look at other ways to look at livelihood options than harming the environment. And that was the answer that was given by the recyclers from 9 Delhi. And I thought, I mean, that was like, in a way, very perceptive. But again, having said that, there is this organization called Chintan in New Delhi. It's one of the oldest organizations working with waste pickers, and they have just released a report says plan the ban. So, where they have actually studied 4 cities and they've looked at the cost element of different plastic items and how it is going to affect the waste pickers if it is implemented. But if you look at the items that are proposed to be banned, it's I mean, it's straws. The value is low. What we really need to be looking at is right now multi-layered plastics, multi-material plastics have no value. Have no value. They are harder to pick. They are harder to sort, grade, whatever bale. They take up too much space in the truck for transportation as well. And where are they going? They're going to cement kilns. But to cement kilns also, it's the waste pickers who are putting in that effort for collection, but they're not being compensated. So I think you need to look at it. So one is the companies definitely need to redesign that whole system. And even now, I see an opportunity for waste pickers if refilling, reuse system pick up, they will be the best place to run it. You know,
You
so that is.
sound like you believe that this will actually go ahead, like we will actually start to phase out, which I'm so I'm getting that from you that you think this is going to happen. When is this happening?
No,
Especially for
no.
Bangalore,
So,
which sounds like a very plastic, um, I guess, conscious city. Like you guys are already starting to make that change. You're conscious about it. You're ready for something new, a new system.
okay. Um, well, I'm not sure. I mean, am I sounding too optimistic? I don't know. Because, like I said, we have fantastic rules on paper. It's the implementation and enforcement that takes a back seat. So, that is
Mhm.
where we need to get at. But having said that, yes, Bangalore per se has always been a very conscious city. And in the past, like once waste pickers came on board, there has been a lot of attempts made by citizens, especially to include them in most of their dealings with. But now, like yesterday was World Refill Day, and but if you look at the papers, there was not much carried about. I mean, there was nothing much talked about in terms of refill. So while Refill is an important aspect. I still think we really need to galvanize more community and demand for refill systems, which is definitely going to take some time. But with plastics, if I give you example of Bangalore from 2016 to 2020, to 2020, before the pandemic, it looked like we were on the right track to addressing single-use plastic ban. But after the pandemic, everything changed. The priorities of citizens, government was obviously different because most of them were affected with COVID, and plastic has made a huge comeback. So we are back to square one right now. We have to go back. And so if the institution is weak or the systems are weak, obviously this will be a recurring challenge. So there has to be something that has to be done systemically, and not just on paper, but also in operations. And so I don't know. I mean, so I may have sounded optimistic, but yes, we do have a long way to go. But yeah.
We need that optimism around. And look, you're quite knowledgeable about Bangalore and what you guys are doing. What can the rest of the world, or maybe even the rest of India in that region, what can they learn from Bangalore?
Uh, I think what I mean. I think in some aspects we're very lucky in Bangalore because we have such an open culture of active civic engagement where
Mm,
citizens absolutely engage and the government listens, and they engage with us as well. And it's not just for waste management, it's across. It could be lakes, it could be mobility, it could be so many other civic based aspects. And we've always had that kind of good rapport with we've enjoyed that whole dialoguing system, which may not be have been many places it might not have been very successful. But I think, and also we have this open culture, even though we have XYZ groups working on different aspects, there is somewhere that there is a coming together, and that collective mechanism to ask for something that you really believe in or is going to this thing, it will help. So I think what we need to do, I mean, what other cities or other countries also, if you're looking at this space, is to build that active community engagement, which has to be ground up, which should have a charter point. What is the five non-negotiables for this particular group? And then you move upward. And I think and then demonstrate. You can't keep preaching without practicing. So if you believe in something, demonstrate, document, share, and don't criticize, don't judge. I think that is the most important aspect, because once you start criticizing, you've lost a critical mass. um, how would you actually show somebody by your actions things have changed, and for somebody else to look at it and say, okay, let me also give it a try. And I
mm.
think, and also that whole concept of nurturing, like you don't say, but this is not the right way to do it, but that whole thing has to come together, and then obviously approach the government, make the case, read up about the laws, see where we are lacking. Those kind of things also come into play. So I think building a conscious community is the first step to doing whatever you want to do.
And probably one of the hardest, because it's not like it's not simple. It's so gray and it takes hard work. And that's why it's a solution that will be sustainable over 5, 10, 20, 50 years and beyond, because that foundation has been set of community. And, we're all about sustainability here. Um, and just around the plastic, which I mean, I'm going to ask a bit of a gray question. There's certain people around the world that don't want us to start to cling away from plastic. You know, India is very similar as a country to Australia in that it relies heavily on exports and productions of certain compounds such as fossil fuels and plastics. So you're coming against this industry. Have you noticed any pushback within, let's say, Bangalore from industry saying, no, we don't want this to happen, or or any kind of intervenence that they've come into you guys?
Maybe not directly, but I can tell you in 2016 when we had the plastic waste management rules, it was there was one clause which was very progressive, which basically stated uh, in by I mean the rules were declared in 2016. So at the end of 2 years, that is by 2018, items which cannot be recycled had to be phased out, and
Mm-hmm.
we were all like, wow, this is so progressive and we're so happy and all that. And 2018 deadline approached, and there was an amendment to the rule which basically stated items which cannot be recycled or energy recoverable need to be phased out. So
Mm.
there you go. There is definitely a silent lobby, maybe not in your face, but it happened, and that was heartbreaking for most of us because I understand. See, I understand. I'm a practical person. I understand that 2 years might not be a realistic timeline to look at a complete phase out without having an alternate product to package your biscuit wrappers or whatever. But there has to be certain things in place so that you give them those targets, and and ensure that the industry invest in product design, invest in that science of recreating, and all, or look at what evaluating alternative materials. So all that needs to happen, but you can't sit on it for 2 years and not even show progress of what you have done. that is that was really upsetting, and
Yeah, I can
it's
imagine.
everywhere.
Oh, well, what do they mean can't be has to be energy recoverable? Where are they sitting at with how that would even look?
Energy recoverable could be cement cleanse, it could be incineration.
How are they recovering that energy? I don't understand. It's like to create this plastic, we have to extract the fossil fuel. We create then these pellets that are turned into this plastic product, and then you incinerate, and that CO2 just goes in the air. It doesn't get. That's so confusing. I don't understand, Pinky. I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean that's a difficult, because then after that there was this huge guidelines of which plastic goes into cement cleans, what should be it, because it was also being touted as an alternative, right? It's an
Hmm.
alternative fuel feedstock intake. So yeah, so that was disappointing. So yes, maybe in other countries the lobby is very upfront, but in India we've not had. I think the focus has always been on waste and plastic, that we've not really looked at the production aspect of it. I
That's
do.
fair
Yeah.
enough. Well, we've talked about what Bangalore has done really well. Now, we can't say or sit here for a moment without admitting that there is a long way to go.
Absolutely.
Not just for Bangalore, for everyone in the world. We are not even halfway through this race. What do you expect? What's the next step for Bangalore, India, or wherever you'd like this to go to achieving a greener and cleaner community?
Okay, I think one is that given that COVID has set us back again by 2 years now, two and counting, um, we have to go back to the drawing board and we have to go back into relooking at things, conducting, I mean, having proper data on board. I think data management is one of the biggest missing elements in this whole chain. And I think without proper data capture, we'll always be shooting for the stars. So um, that's something that we really need to get in order. But yes, I think we need to go back and rework and build that whole connections again, evaluate where our systems are failing. If there is something changing, why is it changing? I mean, we need to be asking these questions more actively, and engaging on the ground more effectively is what I think. But uh, and build more awareness. We need to bring back the conversations around plastic even more strongly. And I know that June, if you look at most of the social media, there was a lot of thing about plastic. the government actually has also, like in India, the government has finally made an attempt and started and has just created an online portal to track, because we've had a new extended producer responsibility rules released, and so they have an online portal right now where the producers are supposed to put in the figures of how much they are generating and how much they are recycling. So that's a start, but we have to see how much. I mean, we need to be able to see how much of it is publicly accessible, and we need to see
Mm.
what are they doing and how are they working, and that needs to be in public domain, because without which and they also not have to just not just have to be in public domain, but they also need to engage with the local state governments or the local municipalities. Otherwise, it's not going to be, we're not going to be able to track, and we will still be just talking about it from a very surface level. So if you really need to have change, everything has to be transparent. The processes, the data, the systems, the governance mechanism, all this needs to come together. Otherwise, and the inclusion part, what we are saying is you might come out with EPR rules, but if waste pickers are not included, how are you even going to meet your collection targets? So those are certain things that need to come together, I think.
Transparency is a big one. It's a huge topic. When we think political change, transparency is usually not even in the conversation. So when it comes to that, when you're talking about how they can put in their data into this portal, I'm thinking, oh my God, nobody's keeping them accountable. They can make up the figures from the top of their head. Oh yeah, it's less than last year, probably. Let's just put it less so it look better. And this is just, if we can't hold them accountable, how are we meant to know where we're going? And I guess that's to your point as well, the data management side of things. So you're wanting this trackable data. And I want you to expand on that a little bit further. So let's say we start with these producers that track all the waste and all the recycling coming in. What other data would you like tracked?
So if I look at the rules, what the government has done is the government has divided the plastics into four categories, and they have, so now what they are, for whom they are holding accountable is producers, importers, brand owners, and manufacturers and of plastic packaging. And that is an important thing, because and they've also defined it by anybody with a trademark becomes responsible for what they produce, and I think that is a huge plus. And then they have what you say, they have created percentages which I think are a bit too ambitious, but any which ways, they have also categorized it into different categories. So category 1 is like your rigid plastic. Category 2 is your flexible plastic packaging of single layer or multi layer, but with different types of plastic. Then you have category 3, which is multi layered plastic packaging, and then you have the category 4, which is like compostable plastic and the likes. So that is the categorization of plastic. Then they have said that the EPR guidelines will look at reuse, recycle, use of recycled plastic content, and end of life disposal. Now, so those four aspects. Now, with the four aspects, then they have specific targets for each of the category. So, for instance, they have said if category 1 by 2024-25, which is rigid plastic, you have to ensure that the minimum level of recycling achieved, excluding end of life disposal, should be set at 50%. If you are at flexible packaging, it's 30% for 24-25, and by the end, which is by 2027-28 onwards, it should be 80%. So they have set a steady increase of 10% from 2024-25 to 27-28. Now what they have also done, which I find very interesting, is they have created a formula of how they will account for how they have produced. So, just to give you an example, now if it is an importer, they say eligible quantity in metric tons shall be the average weight of all plastic packaging material import of imported and or plastic packaging of imported material products category wise, imported and sold in the last financial year. Then they have then they add average quantity of pre-consumer plastic packaging in the last two financial years, and the minus whatever they have generated as waste, and what is supplied to different entities. So it's like a huge formula which I'm happy to send it to you, which I thought was an interesting way to look at calculations, because you're looking it based on your financial data and you're looking at what you have imported, which means the data is already available at different with different entities. It could be the customs, it could be the excise, it could be the income tax, so that makes it a little bit interesting. But like I said, we have to see how it will phase out operationally. So on paper, it looks good, but
That's the
operationally,
start.
yeah. And now the portal is also on. So, but the portal again, I checked it out today, and there was not much information yet. So there
Well,
is.
what I'll get you to do is actually email me that link to the formulas. Anyone who's actually interested in learning more about that, because it does sound quite fascinating and something we can maybe learn to incorporate in different ways. I'll leave it linked in the show notes if anyone wants to go check that out. Um, there's so much we covered in this episode, and I'm I'm really surprised. Look, I had read your stuff, and I knew that but just when I pictured India, I didn't picture such a um, plastic conscious, because I understand countries in Asia, they don't have, or even in the South Pacific, closer to home to me, and even some rural parts of Australia don't have the facilities to handle waste at all. And the best part is actually how you guys have really taken the waste pickers and brought them into the conversation. So that's something that I find is incredible and something that should be adopted around the globe. So, to round out the episode, I'd love to give you the stage, Pinky, for 1 to 2 minutes to just share your words of wisdom. It could be about something we spoke about today, or it could be something completely different and irrelevant. But 1 to 2 minutes, Pinky, the stage is all yours.
Oh my God, you putting me on the spot right
Yep, just
now.
any wisdom you have for us. One more nugget.
Ah, okay. Okay, that's going to be tough in terms of wisdom, but is it okay?
Actually, you know what? I'm speaking to a poet. Can
Yes,
you,
I was
at the
just going to
beginning,
ask, is it
at the
okay if I
beginning,
share a poem?
yes, let's do it. Share the poem. It's something a little bit different, and I think we can all appreciate that.
Okay, I'm just going to share with you why garbage speaks through me through poems first, and then share with you the poem. So I think garbage speaks to me through poems is because it allows me to reflect on not just what I buy, recycle, or trash, but it also allows me to make sense of waste. It also allows me to understand why do we feel repulsed, because if you look at it, when you have kitchen waste and it's in the bin and it's already rotting, and there's a slight foul smell, you automatically feel very repulsed. Or why do we resist? I mean, why is it so hard to segregate waste? Is it because we're feeling repulsed? Or why is my clean not your clean? So when you look at a dry waste collection center, you go in and be like, oh my god, so dirty. But when I look at it, I'm like, oh wow, this is so neatly organized, because I've seen so many centers, so many collection centers in India. I think I have visited at least 18 different cities, looking at 18 to 24 different cities, looking at how their waste is organized. So for me, some places are clean, but for other people, it might not be clean. And then why is, even though garbage is always in the news, why is it still cloaked in a layer of anonymity? And why do we see what we want to see? So basically, it allows me to look at the city's landscape and our relationship that we have with waste and with people who work in waste. Because so that's this thing. I actually, okay, I had one poem which was on harsh reality. Okay, I have this poem, Breaking Up with Plastic, and I think I will share this poem. So, this is how it goes. I warned you. I'm demanding. I can complete you. I will make your life easier. I'll make your life simpler. I want you. I'm attractive. I'm an addiction. I will overpower you. I will give you instant gratification. You warned me. Now I'm a victim to your abuse. You are choking me and my relationships. I feel like I have cinder blocks pulling me down. You warned me. You love to hurt me in subtle ways. You can never really go away. For you are in me and in all the things I eat, drink, play, turn on, sleep, and use. Oh, plastic, you were toxic, yet so attractive. Oh, plastic, I underestimated you. You're keeping me hostage in the name of convenience. Your love is ruthless, but I'm done. This is it. I'm breaking free. In my own way, I'll go against the tide. One day at a time, one thing at a time. A bag, a cup, a bottle, a straw. Oh, plastic, I'm breaking free. That's it. This is a poem that that I had penned down in 2019.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Incredible. I love some good poetry. It's awesome, firstly, poetry as a whole, that someone can express themselves in a way that feels true to them, but also in that way it helps other people. They have all these emotions, especially tied to plastic, and when you realize how shocking it is to our bodies, to the environment, just for everything, you don't know how someone else can really express that. But hearing that, I think, could make some people feel not alone, knowing that other people, yes, they feel like this. It's true, like it's so beautiful and it's in everything we use, but crap, it's killing us.
Yeah.
Like that kind of polarization, which is amazing. So to round this out, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this conversation. Thank you for sharing your incredible poetry. And a very special thank you to actually going out there on the street, rallying communities in sustainable action, something that your cleaning up could have saved countless animals' lives. The fact that you help puppies get adopted is absolutely incredible and super compassionate. So there's so many pieces of the environment and different creatures that thank you for the work that you do. And it's really awesome to see people like yourself on the front line really making that positive change and then coming on and again sharing your incredible wisdom. Thank you so much, Pinky, for your time today.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Hi there. Welcome to the end of the episode. Thank you for listening and or watching the whole way through. I hope you enjoyed it and took a few things out of it. I know I definitely did. Thank you to Pinky for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your beautiful poetry there at the end. For anyone looking to connect with her, I've left all the links to do so in the show notes below. With all that being said, I hope you all have a great week and I'll see you on the next episode. Stay happy, eat plants, peace.